America defeated, but its president digs in to defend his decisions.
I was not going to extend this forever war, and I was not extending a forever exit.
But it followed scenes which will go down in history. The US leaving Afghanistan humiliated and now replaced by the enemy they came to fight 20 years ago. And across their country, the Taliban savour the moment in rapturous celebration. Well, the president clearly wants to draw a line under the disasters of the past 2 weeks, but it may be a vain hope. We'll get analysis from Emma in Washington and Rohit in Doha. And what of the Afghans left to a new regime? The little girl who lost everything. We tracked down Aisha, abandoned in Kabul, who's found a home at least. Also on News at 10.
Dame Sarah Story wins her 16th gold medal.
Powering into the record books, Dame Sarah Story strikes gold again to become the joint most successful Paralympian ever. After a 4-year battle, Geronimo the alpaca put down by government vets to the fury of its owner. And
here he is in his Dragon-class blue bottle.
The yacht restored to glory and back in the race, and why it meant so much to the late Duke of Edinburgh.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. The decision-making of President Biden over the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan has been under almost constant attack for the past 3 weeks. This evening, once again, he set out his defence 24 hours after the last American military plane left the country that those troops had tried to protect. The evacuation mission had been an extraordinary success, he said. In a half-hour address to the American people, he was not prepared to extend the forever war, he said, as it has become known, and he was not going to extend a forever exit. The choice was either leaving or escalating, he claimed, and he was not prepared to put military families through any more hell.
It is a defining image of America's defeat, the solitary walk of the last soldier from Afghan soil. And these, the defining images of victory, the giddy dash of the country's new commanders, scoping the abandoned spoils of their enemy.
We're here right now with the Taliban as they enter into what was only minutes ago, it was an American-controlled portion of the military airport. Now they're taking over.
How fast things change, how little changed. After 20 years of battle in the quest to unseat the Taliban, their foot soldiers celebrated their return and the US's retreat. 24 hours after the final flight took off from Afghanistan, the man who ordered an end to America's longest war insisted it was a war that should have ended many, many years ago.
I'm the fourth president who has faced the issue of whether and when to end this war. When I was running for president, I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. And today, I've honored that commitment. It was time to be honest with the American people again. We no longer had a clear purpose in an open-ended mission in Afghanistan. After 20 years of war in Afghanistan, I refused to send another generation of America's sons and daughters to fight a war that should have ended long ago.
The airlift and evacuation were, he said, a great success, something that will be questioned by many. And there was a message for those who took American and Afghan lives just a week ago.
And to ISIS-K, we are not done with you yet. To those who engage in terrorism against us or our allies, know this: the United States will never rest. We will not forgive, we will not forget. We will hunt you down to the ends of the earth, and you will pay the ultimate price.
The president's decision to walk away from Afghanistan will be respected by some. Yet even those who fought for their nation question the nature of the departure. Veronica Hoyer served in airborne intelligence in Afghanistan. Her husband was in special ops. They're now trying to help Afghans they worked with who are still trapped.
I feel absolutely devastated. The last 2 weeks I was enraged, but now I just feel sad. I've been working around the clock to help Afghans arriving and Afghans who are trying to flee. I'm embarrassed that my country left behind so many of our allies, I'm angry that he put, by his lack of planning for this withdrawal, he put American lives unnecessarily at risk. And we sign up to fight, but it doesn't mean our lives are dispensable.
Max, the president says that forever wars have got to end. What do you feel about that?
Did he ask the terrorists if they were going to stop their war? I mean, that's really... We can say that we're done fighting, but until the enemy that you're fighting is done fighting, you're not really done with the forever war.
President Biden has delivered on his promise to bring the troops home. He may not accept it was an unceremonious end, but it's an end which leaves America and the West trying to decide how to work with the warlords they sought to destroy. Emma Murphy, News at 10 in the United States.
Well, the final departure of American forces was celebrated by Taliban fighters and sympathisers across Afghanistan. For those who are neither, it is a terrifying time as they anticipate or try to escape the rule of Taliban 2.0.
Kandahar this morning, where a wave of white flags showed the Taliban takeover is now complete. These were the first hours of its second era of total control, and in the second city, ITV News saw how the end of America's presence was welcomed. The people on the streets do not speak for everyone, and some did not speak at all, because although this was a beginning for many, it's an end for many more. On the tarmac at Kabul airport, the Taliban arrived to say that what the Americans call withdrawal, they call victory.
امارات اسلامی افغانستان با آمریکایی‌ها از راه دیپلماتیک روابط حسنه می‌خواهد. اگرچه آمریکایی‌ها اینجا شکست خوردن، ناکام شدن در بخش.
But there is no celebration for those left behind who tried to get on the final planes. We spoke to one British man still in Kabul.
I would say we were going to die here. We were going to die. My kids and families, they were going to die here because everyone, and then here, we know I'm British citizen. My kids' families are British citizen. Yeah. Boris Johnson, please help us to come out, to get out from here.
We're inside a compound of villas in Doha, built for next year's World Cup. What's become Little Kabul, a village for those who managed to escape during the last few days, and where last night they watched withdrawal from afar.
So what does today mean for you?
It doesn't mean anything for me right now, because I don't know about the next step, what's going on.
And for Afghanistan?
For Afghanistan, nothing. A dark day will come in Afghanistan.
Abdul was an interpreter for the US military who managed to make it to Qatar with his family after the Taliban arrived at his front door.
I knew it that if they will capture me, they will cut my head. Just one thing was, I was thinking with myself, I know they will kill me, but what should I do about with my family? I know that they will kill me in front of my family.
For Abdul and his family, that threat is now over. But for many more, for many millions, it continues. Rohit Katru, News at 10, Doha.
Well, the end of the 20-year war in Afghanistan marks one of the 21st century's most significant moments. It was a conflict that began, of course, when the Taliban refused to hand over the leader of al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, after his group's 9/11 attacks on America. Within weeks, President Bush and Tony Blair had ordered an invasion. The Taliban were overthrown, but in 2003 they launched an insurgency that would harass foreign troops for the best part of 2 decades. By 2011, there were around
Look at the weather. Steph has the details.
140,000 foreign troops in Afghanistan, but still the Taliban couldn't be decisively defeated. The death of Osama bin Laden gave Western nations an excuse to reduce their presence, and combat operations officially ended in 2014. The Afghan government still needed foreign military support against the Taliban. But last year, the US promised to withdraw if its troops were not attacked. And now Joe Biden has kept that promise. Of course, that's what he wanted to underline tonight. Well, we've got Emma in Washington and Rohit in Doha this evening to talk more about what happens now the 20-year war is over. Emma, over to you first. This was a president digging in, no regrets. What did you make of what he had to say tonight?
Absolutely. He has faced really ferocious criticism over the past few weeks as the scenes in Afghanistan have unfolded, and people have seen it as a chaotic departure. When he walked out to deliver his speech today, he was quite determined. This was not something he was going to defend, it was something he was going to explain. It was a really forceful delivery from the president, and it certainly signified his belief in what he's done. He's believed for a good 10 years that America needed to get out of Afghanistan. He didn't even support the surge back in 2009 when he was vice president, and today had the feeling of a man who was actually getting his own way and was going to make sure people realised that he felt that this was absolutely the right thing to do, irrespective of the optics. He was very strong on the fact that he wanted to see the next generation of American servicemen and women out of Afghanistan. He didn't want the history to keep repeating itself. He says that he is going to take America forward in a new way, but he didn't actually take responsibility for any of the scenes of chaos or those that were left behind. He took responsibility for the decision, but that is a very different thing. He believes he's right. The history books will determine if he is.
Emma, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, let's cross to Rohit now. And Rohit, the bottom line is the West is now reliant on the Taliban to deal with the security situation in Afghanistan, isn't it? It clearly has huge implications for the whole region and indeed for the West.
That's right, Julian. Many countries will have to embark on the sort of security partnership they have with so many other countries where intelligence is shared, perhaps lives are saved, but noses are held because both sides don't really agree with what the other stands for. Remember, the US is leaving Afghanistan on the basis of a commitment from the Taliban that it will not let international terrorism thrive in its territory. That commitment is completely untested. We do not know whether the Taliban has the willingness to commit to that or even the capability. Remember, this is a poor country. Counterterrorism is expensive, and it's had many of its funds frozen, and they are still frozen. Of course, what worries the UK, the US and others are two groups. ISIS-K, which we've heard about so much over the last couple of weeks, which the Pentagon thinks has around 2,000 hardcore fighters. And, of course, Al-Qaeda, which went quiet but hasn't gone away. Now, what's worrying for many Western countries might be the fact that this video emerged over the last few days, which showed Osama bin Laden's security chief coming in from the cold, from Pakistan, being greeted in his hometown over the last few days in Nangarhar. He was cheered. What's so worrying about that is the fact that he was welcomed so warmly, but also the fact that he went back at all. Because if he thinks Afghanistan is a safe place for Al-Qaeda leaders, well, either he's wrong or the Taliban's wrong.
OK, Rohit, thank you very much there in Doha, and of course Emma in Washington too. Thank you both. Well, hundreds of British citizens are still stuck in Afghanistan. The Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab admitted as much today, and tomorrow he faces an inquisition by MPs on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. It's also emerged this evening the Prime Minister's special representative on Afghanistan is already in Doha to meet senior Taliban figures to underline the importance Britain places on getting its citizens and Afghan support staff out. Well, altogether, more than 123,000 people have been airlifted from Afghanistan, 17,000 by the UK. And for those who've made it back, there is relief for them and joy for their families.
A moment this family in Coventry thought might not happen. 79-year-old Leiloma Hafizi returned to her children and grandchildren after weeks stuck in Afghanistan, where she had travelled for a family funeral. Her first tearful reunion was with daughter Fariba.
It was so emotional, overwhelmed with emotions. She was crying, she was hugging me so tight.
But soon the tears were not just of happiness, as Leiloma described her 2-hour ordeal at the gates of Kabul airport. Her words were translated by Fariba.
They had to fight their way through the crowd in order to get to the barrier. And she got knocked by someone, like a punch, unexpected punch hit her right on the chest. She felt a deep pain and she was unconscious after that. My cousin put her on his back and dragged her along on his back all the way to the barrier. She said she felt like I was on the verge of dying. I didn't think I would make it through.
Leiloma did make it through, but so many others are still trapped, with hundreds gathering at the doors of this charity in Feltham to try to seek help for family members, scared that the government's only option now is to deal with the Taliban.
We've had direct assurances from the Taliban that will allow people, British nationals, but also Afghans who want to leave. And overnight, Britain, working with the US and with France, secured a UN Security Council resolution requiring that of the Taliban. But look, we're very sceptical. We will have to test the Taliban.
One former advisor is also sceptical, but says ministers need the Taliban to tackle a new terror threat.
I think the West has to be willing to hit ISIS targets if we had good intelligence, but we should be trying to do that in cooperation with the Taliban, however bizarre that seems.
Cooperation with the Taliban is hard to take for the Hafizzi family, who fled the group over 2 decades ago after their father, a tailor, was beaten for making clothes for women, an experience that makes them fear for those left behind this time.
For the past 10 days, I was quarantined. My mind, my soul, my heart, everything was back in Afghanistan. I couldn't stop worrying and fearing and, crying and tearing for those people who are still stranded and stuck in Afghanistan. It's almost like history repeating itself.
But this time round, the West is not prepared to intervene as forcefully. Anushka Astana, News at 10.
Now, if you were watching News at 10 last Monday, you'll remember the picture of the little Afghan girl we showed asleep, sitting up by the side of a road. Her name is Aisha, and she has no parents, or if she has, they are missing. Well, we've managed to catch up with Aisha. She's been taken in by a woman offering her home, a tent, to abandon children. Well, the fighting of the past weeks has made a bad situation for children even worse. There are now more than 200,000 displaced children. UNICEF says half of the country's under 5s are malnourished and 10 million need some form of humanitarian assistance.
She'd seemed lost to the streets and lost to her own thoughts. A little girl alone in a world traumatised by conflict. We can only guess what perils she'd faced. But this is Aisha now. She's found her home and found friends, even found a voice. She tells us her name, yet so much of her story is still obscured by the chaos of Kabul.
Aisha was found in a street in Kabul where she was collecting plastics like other children. We found her a family who are willing to take care of this little child. But she's not alone. There are thousands of children who have the same story.
Now look, Afghanistan. What's going on in Afghanistan?
We first came across her last week, asleep by the side of a busy road, a wretched emblem of a shattered nation.
Look, people are walking. This is a main street, and she's sleeping here.
She is just one of an uncounted number of displaced or orphaned children scattered across Kabul. Often their only shelter is the sky. Boys like Hamid Ullah, whose father was killed in the war, who now cares for his younger brothers. In all, 10 million children are in need of help, says the UN. Though Western troops have gone, it warns the world, do not abandon the next generation to their fate.
There is a perfect storm, if you like, for the most vulnerable children here. And that is why we need the international community to rally around the children and women of Afghanistan.
Amid so much insecurity, simple childhood pleasures become even more precious. So behind the toy mask someone has given Aisha, there is just the trace of a smile. John Ray, News at 10.
To some of the day's other news now, and different parts of the United States have been at the mercy of different powerful climate events. The whirlwind of flames swept through the Californian holiday spot of Lake Tahoe at the southern end of the lake. Instead of hundreds of summer tourists, there was an evacuation order as a raging wildfire continued to spread. And Hurricane Ida has swept through Louisiana, leaving destruction in its wake. Buildings have been damaged and more than 1 million homes and businesses have been left without electricity. 25,000 repairmen and women are trying to reconnect them. Drinking water and petrol is also in short supply. To the Paralympics now, where Dame Sarah Storey is doing what she does best, powering her way to the front, this time of the all-time greatest British Paralympians. This serial winner had her 16th gold medal win before breakfast time here to equal the current record. She has a chance to move out in front with a 17th on Thursday in the road race. In his first Paralympics, swimmer Rhys Dunn broke the world record to win his third gold of the Games.
Sarah Storey.
Dame Sarah Storey is very familiar with celebrating victory. She knows what weighty jewellery feels like, but the enormity of her achievements in Japan can't fail but affect her.
A special ceremony for a special athlete.
This is the 16th gold of her career. No wonder she's beaming.
I was just over the moon. I've been waiting for this race for such a long time. This is the one that I've been able to put the most preparations into, and it couldn't have been a more perfect race this morning.
This has the potential to be a landmark ride.
So many times we've watched her single-mindedness and strength eclipse the competition. Dame Sarah's been collecting medals for 29 years, at first dominating in the pool, then switching to the track. She's been at 8 Paralympic Games. Gold today makes her Britain's joint most successful Paralympian.
Dame Sarah Storey.
It's a career that can inspire others to greatness. George Peasgood got bronze in his road race. Benjamin Watson picked up gold in his. 5 years ago, Ben was watching the Paralympics from his desk job back home.
I can't really put into words, really. It's amazing having this big old heavy piece of metal around your neck. Once in a lifetime experience. Hopefully maybe get some more experience like this. All the hard work we've put in over the last 4 or 5 years really come to fruition.
Today's accolades now mean that every member of the British cycling team has a medal. Quite the achievement.
This is a superb performance from the British swimmer.
Rhys Dunn powered to his third gold this morning, with a world record to top it off. The sound of the national anthem could ring out again for Dame Sarah on Thursday if she makes it 17 wins and becomes our most decorated Paralympic athlete. A view from the top that is comfortable. Lucy Watson, News at 10.
Well, today's medals keep Paralympic GB in second place in the medal table with 80 in total, 29 of them gold. There we are, sandwiched between China and the athletes of the Russian Paralympic Committee. Now, for 3 years and through a string of court cases, the fate of Geronimo the alpaca has hung in the balance after he tested positive twice for tuberculosis. Well, today, finally, the people whose job it was to put him down arrived at the farm where he lived and led him away. Geronimo's owner, a veterinary nurse, accused the Department of Rural Affairs of cruelty. The department pointed out that more than 27,000 cattle were slaughtered last year to curb the spread of the disease.
This was the moment Geronimo's supporters had been trying to prevent for years, but today the fight to save him was over. Run! Even in the last hours of his life, protesters tried to help him escape, and it seemed that's all Geronimo wanted to do too, but his fate was now inevitable. Leave him alone! He's been the centre of a legal battle since 2017. Since then, his supporters have tried to save his life, but nothing could stop what was to happen next. Unable to catch Geronimo in the field, officers cornered him inside his pen. From outside, you could hear his cries as they prepared to take him away.
They've come in here
and they have forced the death of a perfectly healthy animal.
From DEFRA's perspective, though, he needed to be put down because he tested positive for bovine TB twice, and they had to do what they did today to protect other animals.
No, they didn't. They misused the test. I want them to start producing open, transparent data and just be honest.
Geronimo, though, had to be removed. According to the government, he was, they said, an infected animal that had to be put down as a last resort.
We tested him twice and he was positive to that test. And that test that indicates that he has been infected. He has the presence of antibodies there that could only be there if he had had natural TB infection.
A few minutes after they arrived, officers took Geronimo away as he tried to free himself from the lead. This is something the government said had to happen in a story that's lasted 4 years now. But it's ended for many people here in the worst way possible. Sangeeta Lal, News at 10.
There's still half an hour left of football's summer transfer deadline day, but the main headline, of course, has been confirmation of Cristiano Ronaldo's move from Juventus to Manchester United. And here he is, back in the red of United after 12 years away. Fans will have to wait a bit of time, though, to see him on the pitch, though, because they don't play again until September the 11th. Ronaldo's move meant United were happy to sell their winger Daniel James to Leeds. He's crossed the Pennines for £25 million. And finally, Prince Philip sadly didn't live to see the work completed, but the yacht he and the Queen were given as a wedding present by an Isle of Wight sailing club has been restored to race condition for the first time in 60 years. They called it Blue Bottle because of the colour of the hull. It has had, rather like its owner, a colourful life, including being loaned by the Prince to Britain's sailing team at the 1956 Olympics. It helped to win bronze.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Day one of the Edinburgh Cup, so named after the Duke of Edinburgh, and so fitting that his old racing boat, Blue Bottle, has been restored for the occasion.
Prince Philip is a real dyed-in-the-wool sailor, and he took every opportunity to get out on the water. Here he is in his Dragon-class Blue Bottle.
Blue Bottle was given to Prince Philip and the Queen as a wedding present in 1947.
Blue Bottle finished third.
The boat won bronze for Britain at the 1956 Olympics and appeared at the Edinburgh Cup, where Prince Philip handed out his own trophy.
I'm only sorry that I couldn't come down myself and trail along behind.
The Duke also used Blue Bottle to teach his own children how to sail.
And where Prince Philip has been giving his son some more sailing experience. The Prince of Wales is seen aboard the Duke's Dragon-class racing yacht Blue Bottle.
But the vessel was left to fall into a state of disrepair until the Duke himself gave permission for it to be restored.
The Duke actually saw a lot of pictures of us doing it, and he was really pleased that it was being done in Cowes, and he was pleased that it was going to race again.
Was he interested in updates?
He was very interested, yeah, very interested indeed. And there was moves afoot for us to take it to Windsor Castle so he could have a look at it, but unfortunately, the delay with COVID, and then unfortunately he passed.
These are some of the picture updates that were sent to Prince Philip, allowing him to see the progress of his old racing boat. Prince Philip had hoped to be here for Blue Bottle's first day back in the water. It's been 60 years since he last raced his old boat, and now after 18 months of painstaking refurbishment, it's taking part in the Edinburgh Cup. In the Firth of Forth, Blue Bottle battled against the best of British, and the crew in charge of her say she really does sail like no other.
Occasionally she just sort of lifts her skirts and just goes. She gets us out of trouble from time to time. We're very happy with her.
It's a lot of weight on your shoulders to be sailing Prince Philip's boat.
Well, I know. The first thing is to make sure that we don't have any nasty, embarrassing crashes or anything like that. But we
have avoided that.
We've avoided that so far, touch wood.
As for the race, Blue Bottle currently sits in 6th place with 4 days to go. After this competition, though, she will take her place beside Royal Yacht Britannia in semi-retirement, taken out to race only when the occasion demands something a bit special. Peter Smith, News at 10, Edinburgh.
A bit special indeed. That is all for tonight. Good to have you with us again. From everybody here on the team, good night.